Will the Denver Broncos finally get their Russell Wilson revenge game this upcoming season? How does the New York Giants' addition of veteran quarterbacks impact Shedeur Sanders' draft stock and his placement in the upcoming draft this April? And yes, we will have another guest to help us continue our Mile High Milestones countdown, celebrating 30 years of Denver Sports 104.3 The Fan. All things to come on today's rundown, but we begin, of course, in the NFL, where we got the news yesterday, the bomb drop that Russell Wilson, fresh off of a postseason start but collapse with the Pittsburgh Steelers, who he rebounded with after being let go by the Denver Broncos, who wanted him gone so bad that they absorbed the largest dead cap hit in NFL history in order to do so. Russell Wilson now signs a 1-year, $10.5 million deal with an opportunity to make up to $21 million with the New York Football Giants. And I got to be honest, I don't know how you felt when that news came down, but I was scratching my head a little bit because this is a New York Giants team that moved on from Danny Dimes, Daniel Jones, who was their number 6 overall pick back in 2019, I believe, the Drew Lock draft. And they clearly are going in a different direction at quarterback. They are sitting at number 3 in the NFL draft, primed to make a run at a quarterback if they would choose to do so. They bring in already Jameis Winston on, I believe, a 2-year, $8 million deal, so a reasonable veteran backup bridge quarterback type of contract. And then they go out and they sign Russell Wilson to almost 3 times the annual average value on a 1-year deal. And I'm not sure what their plan is now, because are you going to pay Russell Wilson $11 million with the chance to earn up to $21 million, pay Jameis Winston $4 million, and draft Shedeur Sanders if he does fall in that direction? I'm not 100% sure. One, why do you need Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson together? I don't think that those are two complementary quarterbacks. I think those two quarterbacks run completely different styles of offense and have completely different skill sets to cater and build around. I think if you're Malik Neighbors, you went to bed dreaming about 114 receptions for 2,000 yards and 27 touchdowns with the air raid that Jameis Winston can potentially bring you. And you woke up to the news that you're probably going to reverse course with that and have a significantly lower output as a receiver, but still win about 6 or 7 games either way. So just a bizarre, confounding situation, I think, that the Giants find themselves in. And it feels like it's equal parts ineptitude from an ownership and a leadership standpoint, but also self-preservation and conservation from a coaching staff that feels like they are just inches away from being fired and having to restart that cycle somewhere else. Nonetheless, it does present an interesting opportunity for the Denver Broncos, who will host the New York Giants this upcoming season. And we had this situation when Russ went to Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh was on the schedule for the Denver Broncos as a home game, and we were robbed of it. We did not get the Russell Wilson revenge game pleasure in week 2 of this past season because Russell Wilson got hurt in the offseason leading into training camp and all of that, and Justin Fields started the first 4 games of the season. The Steelers still beat the Broncos with Justin Fields, so it was like a double whammy. We lost the game, and us as fans did not get to experience Russell Wilson coming back and squaring off against his former head coach in Sean Payton with all the bad blood that we know is there. I would assume that if you're going to pay Russell Wilson $10.5 million guaranteed on a 1-year deal, your intention as of today, March 26th, whatever it is, you are intending to start Russ if you are the New York Giants. And if I'm the NFL schedule makers, because of what happened last year and because the NFL is an entertainment business, and while the script, as we commonly refer to it in the NFL, may not exist in that context, the entertainment value and putting things in a position to happen cinematically is definitely in the NFL's playbook. So if I am Roger Goodell and that schedule is still being formulated and we won't know what it looks like, I am now slotting the New York Giants home game against the Denver Broncos probably as the season opener to prevent there from being any kind of issues or mishaps like we saw last year. So my hope fingers crossed, that while I, by and large, don't think or care about Russell Wilson that much anymore as someone who roots for and covers the Denver Broncos, I am hoping that we get this little taste of a revenge game that we were denied last year when he was with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and we get to experience it then, and with the knowledge that him starting at quarterback for the New York Giants is actually probably a net positive for Broncos fans who want their team to win. We will have to see how it shakes out. By the way, Russell Wilson now on his fourth team in 5 years since leaving Seattle. You had the Seahawks, the Broncos, the Steelers, and now the Giants. It's funny that Russell Wilson is kind of following a similar career arc to Russell Westbrook, who we saw join 5 teams in 5 years after signing his mega contract extension with the Oklahoma City Thunder. Ironically, they're both named Russ. And while Russ is seemingly playing some of the better basketball of his recent career, being alongside Nikola Jokic, I don't think the New York Giants, as good as Malik Neighbors is set up to play the best football of his career there in East Rutherford, New Jersey. The other interesting facet as it relates to the New York Giants and this decision to bring in 2 high-profile veteran quarterbacks is what it means for their upcoming draft plans in April. As I mentioned earlier, they sit with the number 3 overall pick in the draft behind the Tennessee Titans and the Cleveland Browns. It's become pretty common speculation that Cam Ward is projecting, or at least, or is trending toward being the number 1 overall pick to the Tennessee Titans should they go for a quarterback, which by and large, I think they will. I think that there was some speculation that they may go a different route when their front office and general manager came out and said that they will not be passing on generational talent with the number 1 overall pick. And the term generational talent with this draft class was most commonly associated with someone we got to know very well here in Boulder, and that is the 2-way superstar Travis Hunter. So I think there was a lot of early momentum and speculation that Travis Hunter might be a sneaky upset surprise pick to go number 1 overall to Tennessee. But it does feel like the Titans, who are a team with Will Levis after a failed experiment with Ryan Tannehill, are in need of a quarterback to anchor their franchise around. And albeit not maybe the most exciting or loaded quarterback class, you do have the number 1 overall pick, and you have an opportunity to bring in the best quarterback at your biggest position of need if you're the Tennessee Titans. And I feel like it's trending toward the direction that that's probably where they'll go. So if Cam Ward goes number 1 overall, that leaves the Cleveland Browns at number 2. They are just in the doldrums of the Deshaun Watson nightmare, who's torn his Achilles twice now. He's going to miss even more extended time. And even when he's on the field, they're arguably a worse team than when he's off the field. So they absolutely have a need at the quarterback position. And so you'd have to wonder, are they willing to punt on a year where maybe the quarterback draft class is not as strong? They're going to have to pay Deshaun Watson anyways. And the quarterbacks they have on the roster, will they maybe go for a 2-way positional player like Travis Hunter who can help them in multiple areas of need and allow them to maybe just kick the can one more year to a better quarterback class where they'll likely be in striking distance again? That's a tough situation to be in as a team because, A, you don't know when and how much you're going to suck, and you don't ever want to go into a season with a losing mentality. So it's starting to me to feel like there's a vibe around the New York Giants organization that Cam Ward is going to go number 1 overall, and Shedeur Sanders is probably going to go number 2 overall, which is why the Giants are doing this bizarre thing about bringing in 2 quarterbacks on the veteran market so that they aren't handicapped or pressured into having to take a quarterback at number 3 overall if those top guys are gone. If they're not, I think it creates an interesting situation. If Shedeur Sanders is there at number 3 for the New York Giants, do you, after spending $15+ million in guarantees on 2 veteran quarterbacks, then draft a young quarterback in the first round and start that process? Do you cut Jameis Winston or Russell Wilson to try to make room? Or are you going to have a $4 million guy as your emergency reserve quarterback every week in Jameis Winston when he's probably better suited for a different role than that week in and week out. This was a guy who started and almost beat the Denver Broncos last season in Cleveland in one of the highest scoring games of their season. So I just find it fascinating and confusing all at the same time. Not 100% sure where they're going to go with it, but one thing's for sure, it feels reasonable to assume that the Giants making this move could be good news for Shedeur Sanders if it's about getting drafted as high as you can. Fit and placement, playing in Cleveland versus playing in New York, probably not ideal for the Shedeur Sanders camp with Dion and the like, but that's the tough situation that you have. And then it brings up the question of, does Dion back up the comments that he made subtly and not so subtly throughout the course of the season, that he would be willing to pull an Eli Manning or a John Elway and force the hand of an NFL team and say, we're not going to play for you, Cleveland, and that allows him to fall to number 3, but then the Giants feel obligated to take him even if they don't really need him or want him in that moment. It's a mess. It's something that I feel like is going to be speculated up until the cards are handed in on April 24th on draft night. And this is what the NFL does. This is the cinema that they create. They keep us wondering. They keep us guessing. They keep us talking about it, and we eat it up gladly. I know I certainly do. All right. It is time to continue our Mile High Milestones countdown presented by your local Ford dealers. We have been counting down 30 of the biggest storylines in Colorado sports over the last 30 years in celebration of the 30th birthday and the 30th anniversary of Denver Sports 104.3 The Fan. And we are inside the top 15. We are nearing the top 10. We arrive at number 13, which commemorates the second of 2 consecutive Super Bowls for the Denver Broncos, the riding off into the sunset of John Elway. And to help us take this walk down memory lane, we bring in someone who has been a fixture on our televisions for the better part of 4 decades, has done everything from news to sports to a cameo on South Park. And he is someone that you will all be familiar with, and that is Ron Zappolo. Ron, such a pleasure to have you on with us today. Appreciate you joining us to kind of help take this walk down memory lane that we are doing in spirit of our 30th birthday, 30th anniversary.
Well, I'm thrilled to be here. I want to get in on Shedeur Sanders, too.
I think we might be having some audio issues there with you, Ron. I can't quite hear you. But
can't hear me?
Let
me try this.
Start of all of this, I would say today's milestone is Super Bowl 33. Again, as I mentioned, it is the second of 2 consecutive Super Bowls for the Broncos, something you were very closely involved with from a coverage standpoint, and that I'm sure you remember well. Ron, I think when the Broncos win their first Super Bowl during that 97-98 season, that was the first time that they had crossed the threshold and they had finally broken the streak of losing Super Bowls for Elway. And it was like they had proven that they can be done. When you're going into that 98 season, was there at all a vibe or a worry or a concern from the media or the fan base that Denver Broncos team might be a fluke or a one and done? All right, we're going to see if we can get those audio issues figured out for Ron Zappolo. I guess I would say while we wait for him to get the mute situation figured out, I would say that when it comes to Super Bowl 33, I think that it's pretty reasonable to assume that that could have been the case, that this was a team that up until this point, it had been Elway dragging the team to the Super Bowl on his shoulders, and ultimately just not having the firepower or the formula quite yet to get there. And then they do it in Super Bowl 32. And leading into that season, even unintentionally, there's got to be a feeling that that could have been the case. And they completely reverse that narrative right out of the gate. They have a situation where they start the season with consecutive wins, including a 20-point drubbing of the Dallas Cowboys that I think put a lot of the league and a lot of teams on notice that, hey, this Denver Broncos team is not just a cute team that made a magical run as a wild card team that was a double-digit underdog in their first Super Bowl that they ended up winning. Terrell Davis rushed for 100 or more yards in 7 of the first 8 games of the season. So that offense was clicking. John Elway had the weapons and the pieces around him to be able to make that run. And then, Ron, I've got you back now. Can you hear me? Okay. All right. So when you look at that season, they started out on a hot streak, kind of blowing out the Cowboys in that first couple of games of the season, but they finished the season 14-2. They created a situation where they had they're coming off a Super Bowl win, and then they have the best record in the best regular season record in franchise history at 14-2, because again, 16-game seasons and all that. And then you add the magical cinema aspect of it that they face the Atlanta Falcons in Super Bowl 33, who are head coached by Dan Reeves, the former Broncos coach, who kind of famously or infamously seemed to butt heads with John Elway and Mike Shanahan. And you get kind of that. I mean, it's ironic that we were talking about revenge games with Russell Wilson returning to the Denver Broncos. They got in his sorts at what felt like maybe a revenge game for both sides, where Dan could have an opportunity to, he's taken a second franchise after leaving the Broncos to a Super Bowl, and Mike Shanahan and John Elway, who were the people left behind, to prove that they were vindicated or validated in their approach in terms of the butting of heads. It really just created kind of a magical setting, and it did make the Broncos in the history of the NFL, among the annals of great NFL teams. They were not the one and done. They were not the 2019 Toronto Raptors who won a championship and then you haven't heard from since. They became a rare franchise to win back-to-back Super Bowls. Terrell Davis becomes the 4th player in NFL history to rush for over 2,000 yards at that time, and he had a league-leading 21 touchdowns. All in all, this was if Super Bowl 32 was kind of the rise, this was the affirmation or kind of the proving point of the Denver Broncos that allowed them to be validated as one of the league's premier organizations, and allowing John Elway, who had fought for so long in his career to reach that mountaintop, was able to do it not once, but twice, and then ride off into the sunset at the time of his retirement as one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play the game. I appreciate you all for joining me today. Thank you so much for your comments and your questions. I can see them all populating on the side of the screen there, and I can't wait to continue our countdown tomorrow and Thursday as we again creep closer into the top 10. Thank you all so much for joining me. Have a great rest of your day. We'll catch you at the same time and same place tomorrow.